Hello, and welcome to the Meditations on Reforestation podcast hosted by yours truly, Ian Kearney. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about the history of deforestation, the science of deforestation, and one of the potential solutions going forward to reforestation that I'm a little partial towards. So let's begin with the history of deforestation. If you didn't know, deforestation began to be a pretty big issue in terms of climate change back in the end of the 18th century, kind of to the beginning of the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, according to a study done in 2014 by Kettle. During this time, as you may know, the transition from essentially no energy towards a large sum of non-renewable energy, mostly coal, started to occur. And this caused a significant amount of climate problems. I'm sure you might be aware of the fog slash smog that covered a large sum of the air above many industrialized cities at the time, such as London being the prime example. And of course, this severely harmed the air quality and began the process of forest fragmentation. And forest fragmentation is the beginning of the deforestation issues that we see today. Forest fragmentation, of course, being the general scattering and dispersing. The more deforestation that's happening, the more forest fragmentation is going to be happening. Pretty self-explanatory. So essentially, with all these large amounts of early deforestation happening in not only Europe, but also in South America and Africa, with a lot of countries being exploited for their copious amounts of wood and trees, as was in the Industrial Revolution. And so the forest fragmentation began happening all over the globe. So that's a little bit of the background of the history of deforestation. What about the science of deforestation? So the connection with deforestation and carbon emissions actually lies in the fact that every living organism has a certain X amount of carbon within it, including trees. And this carbon, while low in some species, such as maybe a tomato plant or a corn plant, for instance, is very abundant in large trees, according to a UCS USA study done in 2008. And when such a large organism is left to rot or used for natural products or burned or anything, an ample sum of carbon dioxide is going to be released into the air. And so, of course, with trees such as large as perhaps a red oak tree, a forest of red oak trees, you can see how carbon emissions are going to be able to stack and stack and stack, and that's going to be causing a bunch of climate problems. As of 2012, it's estimated that deforestation is responsible for approximately 10% of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. And on a larger scale, in terms of anthropogenic emissions, as of 2009, deforestation accounts for what is estimated to be between 17 and 25% of such emissions, according to a study done in 2009 by Strasbourg. Now, the previous enigma mentioned about the undercoverage of deforestation's impact on global carbon emissions is a real concern going forward on the fight against carbon emissions on a more focused scale, and against global warming on a bigger scale. Now, what about the proposed solution to deforestation that I brought up earlier? And of course, like I said, I'm a little bit partial to it. And this solution is the seed drone. The seed drone is a solution that just began to grow in prevalence really about 2012, a decade ago. And a seed drone is exactly what you might think. It's just a drone, normal drone, perhaps a little bit larger than your common drone that you'd be thinking of in your head, equipped with a firing mechanism that shoots out tree seeds, or any seeds for that matter, but tree seeds in this instance. And the reason I'm so partial to seed drones is just how incredibly efficient they can be. When you compare them to normally reforesting by hand, by volunteers or workers, or what have you, the average worker or volunteer, the average human, can reforest about 1,000 seeds per day. And that is a lot. 1,000 tree seeds per day is a great number per person. That being said, a single seed drone can reforest up to 50,000 trees, up to 50,000 saplings per day, according to a 2021 study done by Johnson. Now, of course, this 50-fold increase is rather significant, and of course you can see why I'm so partial to seed drones in this instance. Now, what is actually in the seed drone? It's not just a seed. There can be substances such as soil or clay, perhaps even hot peppers to deter natural predators of saplings or seeds such as squirrels. as mentioned in a study done by Stone in 2017. Now, there are, of course, some limitations to the seed drone approach. And some of these limitations include the fact that you're not able to scatter as many seeds as perhaps an aerial flyby approach. Of course, when you compare it to the hand reforestation approach, unfortunately, only up to 20% of seedlings actually germinate and grow into trees, according to a 2019 study done by Coldaway. And of course, in areas heavily afflicted by wildfires, you're going to be slightly less likely to have a copious amount of tree seeds available to you because, of course, wildfires, not only do they burn down trees, they also drastically impact the amount of seeds that you're going to have on hand as a drone seed company. Now, speaking of drone seed, that's actually the name of one of the biggest companies that currently endorses and uses seed drones. And drone seed has been combating wildfires recently in California, according to a study done in 2022 by Horton. Drone seed has been the leading producer, the leading effort in the combating wildfires with reforestation in California in the past year. And so going forward, drones, seed drones that is, at least in my opinion, are one of the most prevalent examples, perhaps the best way to reforest areas. So with this knowledge that you now have, a little bit of the history of deforestation, the science behind deforestation and carbon emissions, and one of the solutions, again, that I'm a little bit partial towards, perhaps you are going to want to look a little bit more into my podcast about meditations and reforestation, and maybe you'll give it a listen on the next go around. Catch you next time.